Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, people of the Lot Radio people. It is a beautiful, very hot day here in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm Russell E.L. Butler, your host for this month's edition of Deep Exposure, as it is for every month. Today, we have my first guest of the year. More on that later. But you may already know them, the DJ known as Adab, my dear friend Miah Benton, and collaborator in Boyz II Them, our B2B. This is our third performance together in as many days. As you can imagine, that might account for the gruffness of my voice and the slower cadence of my speech at the moment. We have really wrung it out this weekend. Thank you so much to all of the people who came and supported and danced to the tunes. It's a really beautiful thing to share in creative expression with one of the closest people in your life. This month, coming up, August, is a pretty busy one for me. On August 8th, I will be DJing at Edgemere Farms in the Rockaways to close the Domingo World Series, which has been in the works for some time. Shout out to Micah. Thank you for having me for this. And then on August 15th, I'll be returning to Mansions for another all-night set. And then the following weekend, I'll be playing the inaugural System Activate Festival put on by my T for T Love Energy family. The Friday night of the event, Adab will be closing, and then Saturday night, or actually rather Sunday morning at sunrise, I'll be closing the dance music portion of the festival. So it's pretty apt that Maya is my guest. And I'm working pretty doggedly on some new music I'm very, very excited about. Under a new, this is the year of aliases, I suppose, and I think that the coming year will involve more collaborations as well. As evidenced by on September 26th, uh, which is also my partner's birthday. I the one of the proudest moments of my life as an artist will be realized. It's 2 years in the making. Um, Kynet Records will be releasing a compilation called Paul St. Hilaire with producers. Some of you might also know Paul St. Hilaire as Tiki Man and the voicer of many of the best rhythm and sound and Main Street Records tunes, particularly my favorites, Acting Crazy and Spend Some Time, both of which you've likely heard me play on the lot several times. Shout out to Richard, who runs Kynet and is one of the folks behind Refuge Worldwide, the radio show, or rather radio station and wine bar in Berlin. He very graciously reached out to me and several other producers to create tunes for Paul, and a couple of the submissions appear on my Constructions Volume 3 record as TM1 and TM2. And he really did an amazing job, and I'll be sharing that track on my socials, but then also on my show next month. For now, I'm just going to get into a couple of tunes, and then Maya will be with us shortly to have a little conversation about music and their life and our friendship. Love and light. Thanks for tuning in. Hello again, everyone. I would like to introduce my dear friend, Miah Benton, aka Adab, and my collaborator in Boyz II Them. Hello, Maya.
What's going on? What's going on?
How are you feeling? How are you
Good.
doing today?
A little haggard. Been a long weekend, but
We've
doing all
we
right.
have had quite the weekend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about what we presented to the people this weekend?
I mean, it's a fun weekend. We got to do our usual thing, like covering a range that we like to do.
Yeah.
I feel like both nights we kind of got to cover two different ranges of things we mess with. So
Totally.
I feel like Friday was definitely like, or Saturday was definitely like a moment where we kind of got to get in the let's get freaky with his zone.
Yeah.
Let's like show some stuff that people haven't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sunday I was like, all right, now we're grown and we're tired a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you played Erykah Badu what, like 2 or 3 times
yeah,
last
that's how
night?
you know it's Sunday.
Yeah,
me,
oh, true,
you know what I mean?
truly,
Like that's
truly.
surreal.
Well, let's get started with the convo. So, just a reminder, Deep Exposure is a place where we investigate different listening practices. It's inspired by the work of Pauline Oliveros, Ruth Anderson, Ania Lockwood, and many other folks who have contributed to a tradition of intentional, focused, and deep listening. And one of the fundamental aspects of that is identifying one's foundation that they bring to the practice of listening. So, Maya, what is your earliest memory of music?
My dad was a really big music person, pastor's kid. He was a big like music, Christian music collector, etc. So one of the earliest memories is definitely like early road trips where he would bring like this like large jewel case of like CDs.
Yeah.
And it would just be like, every type of genre that he messed with and all that type of stuff, which is honestly like also the beginnings of me just like exploring all types of different sounds. Was definitely like my dad collecting a lot of different types of Christian music, like Christian metal, jazz,
Wow.
salsa, all types.
So-
So
So where is this?
This would be at the time. This would probably be like Grand Rapids, Michigan, like
Okay.
Chicago going into Grand Rapids, Michigan. When I
Uh
was
huh.
like littler.
So
Like,
y'all would road trip from Chicago because
well, we road trip.
you were born in Chicago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm born in Chicago. We were road trip in the Midwest, obviously, just
Mm-hmm.
going around certain places, especially going back to Chicago because they
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of like childhood friends, etc. there.
Mm-hmm.
But then also because my mom and dad being from like South and then Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
like with Kansas City and Louisiana, we would road trip down there every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so those extended trips were definitely when you would see like all the CDs come out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember that a lot because it would be like however long our trip, 12 hours, etc. Maybe a 2-day type trip driving all the way down there. But then you had this whole arrangement of music that you would kind of get used to
Yeah.
getting rinsed on the
It,
road.
it would be like, oh, and now this,
Yeah.
and oh, and now this. Oh, now it's time for this kind of a thing. Like,
Yeah.
is there like a predictable progression of albums that
Nah,
your
I mean,
dad would
sometimes it
play,
was just
or
something I wanted to hear, or
uh-huh.
like I would be like, "Yo, can we listen to that CD?" Blah blah. Blah. Because there was a lot of stuff that my dad had that was Christian rap, etc. that I liked.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes it would be stuff I wanted to hear. Sometimes it would be like some Kirk Franklin that you wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like like getting to hear like Stomp and all that when it first came
Oh,
out. Like that type of
absolutely.
stuff. Like
I
so, like
have that
yeah,
is fixated in my
yeah,
memory for
exactly. And
sure.
that was like road trip music. It was
Yeah.
like that whole Kirk Franklin CD when it first dropped. So like it was stuff like that.
So the foundational experience, it sounds like, is not only a communal one, but also like the music of praise
Yeah,
as well,
yeah, very much so.
which is somewhat not, it's informed by this like individual kind of spiritual practice, but like church and like having these roles with very specified roles within church, it is a it's only a communal experience. It's only like this thing that you share with family and community
Yeah.
members.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely, and that was one of the things that I can definitely attribute to like something that like me and my dad especially definitely like really shared in
Mm.
terms of just things was like like definitely a love of a wide range of music.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that experience of kind of like his music connection collection initially was like kind of the first communal music experience of mine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then it kind of, in its own way, because of how house and techno,
Uh-huh.
especially house, etc., has originated out of certain like gospel lineages,
Yep.
etc. It it only like bridged the gap further later on in life for me to be like, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, okay, I get it.
So music has always had this like spiritual connotation for your experience of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a point at which anything that was maybe more secular made its way in, and then how, and also would you also contextualize it within the spiritual frame, like something that's presented as like a secular form of music that isn't immediately like the genre of Christian praise music?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of my first like secular earworm. Like the first joint that I heard that wasn't a Christian track that I was like, ooh. I'm really trying to go back in the memory and see about that one. I want to say really it was probably some like early, I want to say like early New York rap.
Mm.
I can't really
Like
place it.
our like 80s,
Nah, like
like
definitely 90s.
early 90s.
Like yeah, I want to say
Okay.
like honestly some of the early memories of sounds is like Foxy Brown type
Mm.
stuff.
Okay.
And like that joint like what is it? Was it Albie?
Uh-huh.
Like stuff like joints like that. It was like some of those joints were the initial ones. I was like, ooh, these beat. And it was
Yeah.
funny because then those were like samples of earlier
Yep.
stuff. So then that kind of bounced in this other way when I finally started to look into it and be like, oh, so that's a sample of.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so yeah, that was those were some of the first ones I think was like New York rap stuff was some of the first like, oh, what's that? What's happening
Yeah.
over there?
Yeah,
Especially
because
being
you
in the
had this
Midwest.
because you had this reference point of like things in the car with your family and these like long, very, it's a very like deep and intentional kind of space to listen to. And there is a way where you're kind of confronted with these like, there's the environmental contribution of the rubber meeting the road,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's always
Yeah.
this like perpetual noise
It's
underneath,
the hum.
right? The hum, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, and that is an element of this practice of deep listening, is like the way that the environment kind of contributes to your experience of the music. And you know, very often you're not completely conscious of it until you like tune into that other layer, which just comes from like repetition of not only listening but the kind of space in which you are listening.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, I think, especially as a kid, for me, seeing like I think like traversing like large areas of that you've never seen with music that you really like, it has this really interesting like quite literal like window seat to things where
Yeah,
it kind of
a,
it's kind of
a song
sound.
you played last night.
Sure. No, yeah, it really soundtracks like a lot of your discovery as a kid. Because like that's the thing is like as an adult, you use certain things you drive through and you have your music for, but you've been there before, and so it's a
Yeah.
little more familiar. As a kid, when you're driving through like Florida swamp areas for the first time and you've never really seen that. And you're listening to like some, like gospel, like rap or something. And you're like, all right, like I now have this like music that I love and I'm interested in tied to this core discovery of these new things.
Yeah.
And then that's always kind of they were kind of always linked for me. Then it
Yeah.
was like music was a path to seeing other things, but also soundtracking the new things you're gonna see.
Yeah, so it has this like grounding effect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like you get this kind of comfort from the new surroundings, but then it also has this like new, more curious energy coming in that helps you be comfortable enough to like recontextualize those familiar experiences,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you say that that music then changes because of the environment, even if it is familiar?
I think so, yeah. Because I mean, for myself, it definitely did. I would say because there'd be moments where, like, say you're like driving through the plains, and like there's a lot of like
Yeah.
an endless. It's like an endless
It's very
horizon,
flat, like consistent.
and sometimes you'll be listening to like a gospel track out there with like a gospel choir, and you're kind of
Uh-huh.
like, word. All
Yeah.
right, and it's like you're like this is kind of hidden,
Yeah.
and there's just these moments that you'll notice that sometimes your surroundings really shapes the impact certain tracks have when it hits just right. And I think there are a lot of moments for me where that was also an early thing to notice is be like, oh, like this sounds really good out here.
Yeah, yeah, and I can imagine as well, like when you're in the when you're in like big sky country, like it's stuff like that that when in big sky country, like because I'm from an island, and so my experience of this is like foundationally is really with the ocean, right? And becoming is ostensibly like a secular person because I don't have like a formal kind of spiritual tradition I adhere to. Uh, you start to notice things that are that help people reconcile this belief in like some higher power. It's like you go to the ocean and you go, almost up to your mouth in the ocean, and it's like, oh yeah, this is, or you just like look out on the horizon. It's like, oh yeah, I understand why people believe in God. Or when you like have this giant plane and the choir is getting pushed in and reaching these super high heights, it's like I can imagine that it's like, oh yeah, I totally get why y'all feel this way.
No, exactly. You
Even
really look at yeah.
as alienated as I might feel from it, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
this makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and that's always one of the things that like even being in like areas like like Colorado Springs, etc. And even there,
So
it's
you've
even
seen a lot of
there.
America.
There, it's even wilder. I mean, yeah, like in terms of like just like little early traveling, it wasn't like a ton with the family early on, but I do remember every time it was an occasion,
Yeah.
and it was like a special. It was an important thing, because a lot of times it revolved around my grandparents, etc., and seeing
Yeah.
them. As they were like getting sick or things were going on, so there was like real family ties to those road trips. And so I think it became a limited but very memorable experience. And
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Cool. So should we play some music? What's the first thing you would like to share?
yeah. So the first thing I'm actually gonna, I've been lately on this kick of some of my favorite type of like I'm a piano joints.
Yep.
Specifically like ones that are just really, really like on the underground side. Not exactly sometimes underground artists, but definitely tunes that they're just like recently pushing out. They're just like newer, different, weirder. So yeah, the first one is gonna be a track by a low bass DJ Y, and it's not cool. 55 drum.
Awesome. Let's do it. So Maya, tell us about what we just heard.
Yeah. So this is the thing about this kind of style of Amma is like there's like a lot of different like branches of instrumentation for it when it comes down to it. But one of the big things overall for me was that, despite being like African American, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
like, the more like traditional pop culture aspects of I'm a Piano isn't for me. It's like culturally, like I'm removed from that,
Yeah.
and it's not something that like I need to co-op. That like
Mm-hmm.
that's their thing, and it's very much so like their joint, and I love like watching them do it and like watching that happen. But it's not something I need to push.
Totally.
But at the same time, loving the actual instrumentation of it, it was a really happy moment for me when I started to discover that there were a lot of Amo piano producers who were making stuff with just instrumentation. So instead of it being a situation where there's kind of sort of because like very much so in certain ways, there's like the language of Amapiano is something I'm very removed from,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
was something that always was the reason why I would observe it from afar, but not really want to play it all like that because that's not mine to present in that way.
Yeah, very,
Um,
very, very considerate
I
about
mean, it's real,
about
like
cultural specificity in within the West and
yeah.
like cultural context. Even though like there is the this nebulous umbrella of what constitutes Black diaspora, but unfortunately, because of us coming from America, we can at time and correct me if I'm
Mm,
wrong in this estimation, but for me, when I'm uh, discovering even just that language is like so inaccurate, but when I'm confronted with music of different regions that are outside of this immediate cultural milieu that I'm a part of, like mostly stuff from the global South, I'm very conscious of how it's so easy and slippery to represent the same kind of cultural imperialism that is foisted upon us as like African peoples in diaspora, and how often it is that those considerations aren't made and those power dynamics aren't made, and how it's an important thing to think about when approaching this kind of stuff with a measure of intention.
I mean, yeah, yo. I mean, when when you're trying to survive in the capitalist death machine, it's like
Yeah, it
it's a
generates empathy,
yeah,
right?
but
And
it's
not this
also
like dismissal of like, well, I'm entitled to this because I am also X.
well,
Like
yeah, but
we aren't, right?
also it creates a reason for you to be really really intentional about like your own like subconscious co-opting
Mm,
and consumption that can happen living in America, a
yeah,
place that is like very much so co-opting and consuming.
yeah,
And so I think it's really important sometimes when coming across that type of stuff to really be like, all right, is this really mine to present?
yeah.
And sometimes the answer is very much so no.
It's an important aspect of this word that we have liked to throw around of appropriation over the last like 10 or 15 years, and how there's this thing within current political discourse around black folks checking out and being like, oh, we're tired, like we don't have to lend our solidarity or support to what's happening with our immigrant brothers and sisters, or we don't have to necessarily show our solidarity and support for the Palestinian suffering in Gaza and the West Bank or in diaspora, when so many of those traditions are directly tied to our struggles, and there are so many ways in which those people show consistent solidarity towards us. And also, we can't afford to be tired, because regardless of whether or not we vote one way or another or hitting the streets or whatever, we're still subject to the boot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And overall, this consideration is why I really like at a pace. Like I took my time with it, but really like kind of when I started to discover that there was a lot of these I'm a piano tracks that had a lot of like kind of like dance music element focus and
Yeah.
was less about like lyric and had to do with like the instrumentation and the lyricism of that. Then I was like, okay, this is a branch of things that has like we share this. This
Yeah,
we
and,
share.
and and it isn't to say that there isn't like historical precedent
Yeah.
for that kind of cultural exchange that comes in. Like it's something that fascinates me about the development of reggae music or American soul and how it contributed to the creation of things like mento and reggae and ska and roots, and then inevitably dub, and how there ends up being this very like a lot of my work has to do with identifying the points at which things crossed and who was in dialogue with who, to also ensure that like I'm following the thread of that tradition and presenting it in such a way, and how, you know, in the late 80s and early 90s, as house music was spreading across the world, we start to get these iterations of it, you know, in the UK and Europe, and then inevitably in different countries in Africa and other parts of the global South. South Africa has a very specific role in that exchange, especially as it came out of apartheid. I think I'm less informed about like how that began to happen, but Amapiano is like within that cultural lineage of South African house in Kwaito, which was essentially them taking like Larry Heard records and slowing them down, right? And so there are things in this sound like the other day you played something at Mansions, and I like, you know, tapped you on the shoulder. It was like, yo, this is like that Larry Heard shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that specific, I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about, and I'm gonna butcher the name. I'm gonna butcher it, but specifically, there's a specific like descriptor that I always see when applied to that like piano instrumentation of it, and it's like a sigidongo. And it's like SGIDONGO is how you spell it, and it's essentially like always attached to kind of these piano tracks where the piano is really that vocal instrumentation and that
Yeah.
melodic. And so I always, whenever I see that, will like really seek out those joints for like the really like that Larry Heard, like you're saying, like really like housey, Chicago housey feel on the piano. Like those are, it's always attached to specifically when it gets to like a specific type of instrumentation of it, that branch of
Yeah.
like Amapiano style, and it's really interesting. And like I said, like there's a lot happening in that branch of sound in a really rapid pace. And because of just, you know, my degree of separation from it, like, you know, there's a lot of it that I'm still like, yo, we're digging
Yeah.
deep in here and
Yeah, I
seeing
mean,
what's
you're
what,
like,
you
I'm
know?
not gonna, you know, I'm gonna gatekeep your methods, but like, you're really like in it,
I mean,
like
yeah,
finding where it's coming from. Like,
because
you're close to some
yeah,
like
yeah.
direct to like other than like being in. I feel like the next step is like the inevitable thing is you being in direct contact with folks,
Yeah, yeah,
but you're
yeah.
like as close as possible to that.
Yeah, yeah, because it's just, I mean, it's really, I mean, I respect that, like, real talk. That's the only way to get any of it. It's to
Because
get
it's
as
like
close as
digital music. From
possible.
what I understand, it's like entirely digital music.
Almost entirely. If I mean,
Because
I don't, I like for the most, from what I know, like, yeah,
I mean,
almost
just from
entirely.
how it's mastered, like, you know, from my experience as an audio engineer, there are just certain things in the stereo field and like how loud and also how deep the bass is that you just can't do on vinyl. It's one of the physical limitations of the medium. But then also it is this thing that's representative of what's most accessible in terms of mass communication as well. But then it also comes this like unfortunate follow up to it, which is this, even if the intent isn't necessarily there. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that thoughtful because you know, people are building like massive careers off of this kind of thing. But this like this inevitable watering down that comes with the sound.
Yeah.
And so you recently did this mix for your NTS radio show, Heaven Is in You.
Yeah, yeah.
That is an Amapiano special, and is very focused. It's very considerate. It definitely has a like respect for the presentation of that sound. So what led you to being like, okay, now is the moment for me to, because these are things that you've been playing out. But like,
Yeah.
what led you to be like, okay, now is the moment for me to like have this contribution?
Like really measuring the waters of it, you know, really, because like I'm, you know, especially with that type of stuff, like I said, I really wanted to take a like really intentional, conscious approach to wanting to play it. So you probably noticed like real talk over probably like the last 2 or 3 years, like every once in a while I'll just like play
Yeah, and you've
one
mentioned
of
gigs, like
them.
you did a couple of gigs on that Jamie XX tour,
Yeah.
where they had you open up the room, and
Yeah.
how he was very excited by some of this stuff, and how the room really responded
Yeah.
to you playing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I mean, you're not ever like a one sound
No.
DJ.
No. No, not at all. And like, yeah, that was just something where I was like, all right, I'm gonna like, I want to be very like chill with my pacing of how I want to immediately be like, all right, I want to play all this. I wanted to really like, really like get informed and like really like, get familiarized with some of the people that are pushing the sound, especially people are pushing it every day on the underground side or every other day or etc. And really wanted to just like, it's one of those things where that's the type of thing where like outside of like going direct to the source and like living amongst it, I'm never gonna get the entire full context. But in terms of approaching it and playing it and showing respect for it and presenting it to people, I at least wanted to be like, well, if I'm presenting this, I want to know what I'm trying to present and know how to show it to people in a way that makes them respect it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was kind of slowly the pacing of things, and I was like, all right, now I'm like, okay, like there's more of this. I'm like, all right, I'm starting to understand more of this, where the pockets of this, etc. Like, all right, now let's like start to like make it more of a conversation that we're having.
Because you're not because there is a very specific difference between decontextualizing, which we would say is the watering down, the Eurification of sounds, and this kind of homogenizing effect. And then there's recontextualization, which is attempting to find a way to to be a part of the conversation. Not contribute in this one-sided kind of a way, but to be as respectful as one can be as like a consumer in this regard, and as an artist,
Yeah.
that is represented by these like kind of discrete consumptive choices that we have to make. And honestly, like I feel like you and I both do. I don't think of it as overthinking at all, but you and I both definitely go adopting some of these sounds in a way that is more considerate or intentional um, uh, than like most folks really do.
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
I mean, I'm not trying to say that we're like somehow better than or unique necessarily. I mean, to some extent, like honestly, I think it is like a bit of a better way of going about things. Because but I also have to be respectful of the fact that some people who are going to tune into this show live and then eventually on the restream as well, they might not have made these kinds of considerations, and it might help them take this perspective to other forms of music that are coming from these places, that have very different economic scenarios than our own,
Yeah.
and the ways in which we can find this kind of support system for them as well.
Yeah, and I mean, even in terms of some of the AMA as well, like some of these producers, like some of them like help like make parts of the sound and are like doing it, and even then, like even if it's not a monetary thing, it's just a general like respect for. I mean, just keeping it real, it's a general respect for a place that's been extremely co-opted on almost every level,
Yeah, yeah,
especially in terms of American meddling and Western meddling
yeah.
as a whole. So, it went almost anything I approach from there, I try to approach in a way where I'm like, even if y'all are like doing the damn thing, like I'm still just like, yo, let me approach this as like respectful as possible for so many historical reasons. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think overall it's just like even if it's not monetary, it's just a general like spirit of respect for like the diaspora of it.
Yeah, the power, truly the power of music,
Yeah.
which is to connect.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
What would you like to play next?
Yeah. So the next joint I'm playing, let's check it out and make sure. Yeah, so the next joint I'm playing is actually a joint by Jazza Music. It's called Plot Twist. It's a joint I really like a lot. Here you go.
So we were just talking about deep house aesthetics, and this is a track that I made that I can't at all remotely say that I am. I'm definitely invested in the development of the sound of Amapiano, but I am very much a novice. Like I'm following my friend's lead here, in a sense, uh, and but I'm definitely fascinated by the aesthetic of how that bass kind of sits. And there was this track that I made that wasn't like directly a reference to the sound at all, but there is definitely some internalization on my part around it. But more so from that, what we were saying earlier about these traditions of the African diaspora being in dialogue with one another, and deep house making its way over to South Africa, and so the bass in this is more referential of like '90s New York and Chicago deep house, but I've definitely DJ'd it, and somebody yelled in the crowd, "More Ama." So, even though I'm not at all like, I'm definitely invested in the development of experimental black sounds, which I think it's important to contextualize them as such. Very often, uh, folks from Africa, from the global south overall, are discounted from this kind of canon of what is considered to be experimental music. But simply because it has a particular function outside of a sat down academicized audience does not mean that it does not share within the premises of the discovery of different processes and the accentuation of said processes. So this is one of mine off of Deep House for Lesbians called Die Before. Just I started the show and forgot to plug. So please remember to subscribe to my newsletter. It's deepexposure.substack.com. Please consider a paid subscription. Um, if you do a paid subscription, then and you hit me up on either on Substack or on socials, and I'm playing a gig, then you will definitely be listed, and there will in the future be other benefits to being a paid subscriber, some exclusive content for the Substack, live sets, DJ sets from over the years, and some literature I'm working on as well. Working on a longer 2-part series about DIY culture and the necessity for doing things with your friends, making friends and doing things with your friends. And here I am, making things and doing things with my friends. So that's deepexposure.substack.com. Please consider becoming a paid subscriber, and stay abreast of everything that I'm up to. All right, back to our conversation. So Miah, you have an NTS show. It is called Heaven Is in You. What is the origination of that name?
Yeah, so Heaven Isn't You comes from a definite like DIY party I was doing with my homie Carrie back in Cleveland, like back in the day, like back I want to say like Lord time, Lord time, but I think it was like 2015, 14, 15, etc. We were around those years. We were doing the Heaven Isn't You parties at Nas class. And we were doing those alongside in training that was happening there.
And in training was with.
And that was with the homie, Kieran Laveau, Shayna, and then our homie Aaron Vogue and our homie Brian Bohan as well, who were all like, doing that party, and they were doing that on the like noise, techno, industrial, etc. side, and then we were kind of going really like multi-genre, like do a lot of like hip hop stuff, R&B stuff, but then also housey, sometimes techno. We whatever fit, we would make anything that fit. And then we in the basement in the same club, we had another party that our homie Ein was doing, Fana, and it was Disco Paradiso. And Disco Paradiso was like, kind of like the Italo freestyle, etc. party. So you had these three parties of homies that like kind of like covered like a wide range.
Yeah.
And Heaven Is in You was one of those joints. And the name came up was brought up by my homie Carrie, from a record that she has that's really, really, really fire. And I don't remember the specific like artist, but I remember the hook of it is literally like this person saying like Heaven Is in You. And it has all these really like wild lyrics to it. And it's a really dope song. One day I'll have to like send you the reference point for it. But yeah, it definitely was from my dear, dear, dear homie who is like one of the A1 day ones,
Totally.
in a lot of different ways.
So tell me more about your time in Cleveland. I mean, obviously like me, you, and Shane are all in the same group chat. We talk frequently, but then there are absolutely some times when either specific terms come up or specific references to like people or times. Like talking about the Heights or blouse. Or
Right,
you have this whole this whole world that that you inhabit together. So like, what was for our listeners, like what was Cleveland for you?
I mean, Cleveland, is really funny. At first, yeah, and I think sometimes this happens for a lot of people with Cleveland because I've heard this narrative before. Cleveland at first was somewhere where I definitely felt like I had gotten stuck there, and this is funny to say that and feeling that as a kid because I really was like, no, why am I here? Because I remember moving to Cleveland initially and like,
Because you say to people, like, depending on who you're talking to, you say you're from Chicago.
well, because
So,
I am, like I was born there, and like a lot of because the thing about it is that even though my parents were pastoring in Ohio,
the
and
region,
Cleveland, the region,
yeah.
like where they had a lot of the family friend ties and people who went really back, and like
Mm-hmm.
my childhood friends that we like grew up together since babies and etc. Like they were all in Illinois and Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
so that was a situation where with me it was a thing where I spent a lot of my formative time in Cleveland. So like Cleveland, like definitely was like what formed me in many
The
ways.
like coming of
Yeah,
age, like
and then
Chicago's the foundation,
yeah,
and then Cleveland is kind of like chiseling you out
yeah,
over
no,
this
definitely,
marble or
as it
whatever.
does,
Yeah.
as it does. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, like that definitely is the context of how it went.
Is sorry to go back. Thank you, Chatter. Is it Jamie Wild? Is that the artist that did Heaven Is in You?
Yes, yes, it
You're
is.
correct. Thank you so much. Oh, Carrie
Well, of course,
Showers.
Carrie.
Okay,
Carrie was
okay,
like,
there
"I'm
you
gonna
go.
help you out here." Thank you,
Thank you,
appreciate
Carrie.
that.
Shout
Good
out.
looks.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, what were we saying? I forgot what we were saying for a second.
Oh, we were talking about Cleveland chiseling you.
Oh, I mean,
out
yeah,
of
as it will, and
yeah.
as Carrie knows, as she's watching right now, yeah, yeah, no, it really will. But so yeah, it was a dual conversation, because in between living in Chicago and Cleveland, I
Hmm.
was in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah.
So I really have just been moving across the line of the
Hmm.
Rust Belt
Hmm.
over about 35 years of life, and the first about 2 decades was spent between like Chicago, Grand Rapids, and then Cleveland was the big bulk of the time,
Hmm. Hmm.
But that whole region of things was always like a conversation and context of my life in some way, shape,
Hmm.
and form. So then, when meeting, Carrie, and then later on, like Shane and all of them, like I was like, okay, oh, word, there's like much more of lived context in this dance music, etc., than I was even fully conscious that I had,
Mm.
even being from Chicago, even though music was a big part of the household, and there was like Christian house and techno in the like way that we were listening to, it wasn't the bigger conversation of dance music. So I wasn't really
Yeah.
tapped into.
Because it's still centralized on like God capital
Yeah,
G.
yeah. So like it's a situation where it took a little bit of time for me to make the full Midwest connect with what I was doing and where I was living, and be like, oh, I got a lot of lived context for this. I was around a lot of this. I just didn't, fully realize it. 'Cause,
Hmm.
and being younger and just not having access.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
and then also just like having to widen the scope of things sometimes after as you're your own person, etc.
As you're
You know.
coming into yourself
Yeah.
outside of this, because like the church life is such a dense life,
Yeah,
even
it
if you
can be.
don't have like a family member who's responsible for like the church life of others, like being a pastor's kid. Like I can certainly say the place that I grew up in, like I frequently forget until I go back or have like more protracted or rather prolonged interactions with family, like how much, especially black folks, how much of a center whatever church you are a part of so much of your life, and how in some ways it I maybe wouldn't have translated it in this way, but there is this kind of almost like replacement factor that happens, I think, when you experience some kind of distance from that set of community, where you have this foundation of cultural experience through the music, through going to church, but then if you start to follow like a different set of beliefs, or being trans people, you experience some kind of ostracization from this foundational thing, then you uh, something takes its place, even if you're not, or at least for me, even if it's not an immediately like conscious thing. And music and music culture inevitably kind of shot its way up into that space that like church was occupying.
Yeah, but and for myself, like in a lot of ways, it was also a situation where like because of how my parents chose to go about ministry,
Mm-hmm.
um, and approaching it a lot of times in not kind of sometimes what happens with it being very it can be very capital focused,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
very um very it can be very dogmatic and
Mm-hmm.
controlling of things in
Mm-hmm.
my and in a lot of
And
ways.
isolating to some
Yeah,
extent.
and in a lot of ways, my parents were and still are, were they were about the community of it
Yeah.
in a very heavy way. Because
Uh-huh.
like in Chicago, back when my parents were doing ministry stuff, they were doing like street ministry stuff,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
talking to people on the street and etc. So I I I also grew up a little removed from the social aspects of church
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
It almost in a lot of ways I kind of grew up with just God, the Bible, and the praise of it.
Oh,
So
interesting.
like the social part was missed on me as well in certain ways.
Mm.
And so I tell people that it's been really interesting because then the one to one worship context of both of those things in terms of dance music and then gospel, etc., was a very easy thing because the social part of it wasn't really there for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
finding dance music and finding a community of that within that sound accenting and building it,
Uh-huh.
it gave a social context to something that I was already in the like almost like praise and like revelatory part of,
Yeah.
but hadn't really gotten to the social aspect of.
Yeah.
Like I'd always felt very removed from the social aspect of church.
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt very connected to the music or the scripture of it or but the other parts of it were the parts that I was kind of like, I don't really know.
Yeah, yeah. I
Like,
I have a similar kind of experience, and there were times in my life where I identified actively as an atheist, and then eventually as agnostic, and then kind of flip flopping between the two. And now I wouldn't like classify myself as that. I don't classify myself necessarily as a secular person as well. Like I do absolutely have like a pretty deep and also like somewhat unintelligible even at times to myself spiritual practice.
mm, mm,
um and it is one of those things where like music is my ministry.
mm,
It is the place in which I feel connected to whatever it is that when we say God, we're pointing at really this approximation of
yeah,
something that we don't necessarily possess the consciousness to even like completely understand.
yeah,
But it is also activated by this communal experience and the context of growing up within church. Definitely helped me contextualize that more easily. Like I think that if I didn't have that, in some ways, getting older, it is a blessing to um, be able to recontextualize your relationship with something that may have been at one point in time traumatic. But now it helps me see that, okay, and similar to kind of what you're saying, is oh, without this foundation, it would be harder to identify like what or why I have such a strong connection with this thing.
yeah. No, exactly, exactly.
And heaven is in you is like it's the Quaker thing. It's like we all have God within us. Like when I say love and light, like that's a Quaker thing. I went to a
Mm,
Quaker
mm,
school when I was a
mm.
teenager, and there are all these ways in which different religious traditions talk about this fundamental concept, which is something that is the connective tissue between us and others.
Yeah, and I also say though, like it's also a thing where like you know, I mean, heaven is in you is also it's also like a reminder.
Mm.
Because I think sometimes, and what I've always loved about and taking it away from in certain ways, like the song, the actual referential song, is like, you know, oftentimes, especially out in the world, especially in a world that is consuming a lot, etc., we definitely like we look for heaven out there a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We look for it like out in a really broken world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes it's nice to be reminded that like heaven is in you. Like you carry it with you.
Yeah.
It's kind of there. And like you can go out and seek it as much as you want, but you're seeking out something that's already like in yourself.
Yeah.
And you should act as such.
And if
You
it's
know what I
in
mean?
you, if it's in me, then it's also in you, and it's in you, and it's in you. And so if we're all like, interacting with one another with that kind of presence, that kind of presence, like that's what that's empathy and compassion. Like
Yeah.
that's
No,
the
exactly.
foundational aspects of human existence, and not just like consumption and domination and imperialism. So you're going to play something you would say is indicative of Heaven Is in You.
I would say it's indicative of like just Midwest and
Okay.
like stuff that like we really just like like I really vibe with, and somebody that like I've always been a really big fan of, which is Gemini.
Yeah.
Obviously, so
Yeah.
there's this album, and shout out to Shane, like Kieran Laveau on this joint called The Music Hall. It's a record by Gemini,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a record that like me and her used to listen to a lot, and like she got me initially hip to back in the Cleveland days and the
Mm-hmm.
old studio days. And so this record I've been recently like listening to a lot again, just like revisiting a lot of the Gemini collection, and this is one of the tracks that I really like. So yeah,
All right. Cool.
yeah.
Rip it. Shout out to Dan Curtin. Shout out to Shane. Shout out to the Heights. All right, that was Dan Curtin Slap, which the homie Kieran Laveau got me hip to, and it felt very apt because the area that in Cleveland that Miah and Shane are from is also the same area that Dan Curtin is from. So it is responsible for some pretty significant contributions to this so-called dance music thing.
I will say I can't claim fully the
Yeah.
heights.
Oh, true. But like,
I was
it's
like
significant enough, though.
yeah.
Like,
I
you
was
were born
kicking
as
it
a
in the heights
DJ.
with the homies.
You
know
were
what I mean?
born.
Like,
You were
yeah.
born as a. You were born as a DJ.
Yeah. No,
in that
definitely.
zone.
That and the East Side, because like East
Okay.
Side was the other part of it. We're like kicking it in the hood, playing pickup basketball, etc. Like
Bet.
down the way from the Heights.
Okay.
See, that's the thing. I was
Okay.
down the way.
Okay,
That's
got you. So you occasionally could be found in the Heights.
Yeah, up the hill.
Bet. Bet. Okay. So I think we'd be somewhat remiss to not talk about our collaboration, Boyz II Them, which I guess technically we're at what, like 6 years of it being a thing? Maybe
That's hollering.
5?
That's a wild sentence.
Yeah, it's great. It's really crazy
Yeah,
because
nah,
like
man.
you have to bear in mind that a little bit of lore for this is Maya and I were aware of each other through just like dance music stuff. Ain't a whole lot of AMAB black non-binary people out there, let alone in dance music. And so having the mutual like, oh, I like, feeling seen, feeling validated by someone else who is also just like raw, like so raw. And before, I'm pretty certain that I nuked my Twitter, so I don't have these DMs anymore, but I'm pretty sure it's before we met in person. Or was it after we met?
It was after we met.
It was
after we met in person.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
we met in 2019, and I was living in Oakland at the time, and after we had met, I frantically, in a caffeinated state, DM'd them like, "Yo, if we ever play together, we should be called Boyz II Them." And they were like, "Yeah, sure." Like as is somewhat the case. Like Maya and I have a very close relationship, and Maya is like very. I love them so much because like they're just like down, they'll like, and I guess my instinct is like around our friendship is just like, oh yeah, I think this is something that they mess with, and then sometimes they've already kind of anticipated it and they're like, yeah, duh, of course, and with this they were like, yeah, kind of nonchalant, like low key, like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then we were asked to play on Pride for the Mr. Sunday party at Nowadays for 2020, so it gives you an idea of when things were popping off, and obviously that didn't happen. And then I pitched us for it because they'd asked me to curate Pride. And I was like, oh, we should also call it Mix Sunday, MX Sunday, the gender non-specific honorific for folks. And so the first gig that we had was both of our first gig coming out of lockdown, summer 2021. And that day was also like, so, the last time that we were on the Lot Radio together was the first time that we ever played together. And then later that day, we went and played Mix Sunday for 10 hours. So we did 2 hours here, and then we did 6 hours outdoors at Nowadays, and then we did 4 hours indoors for the after party.
Yeah, that was
Hollering.
That was wild.
And we've done a lot since then.
Yeah.
So I guess how has this collaboration been for you? We talk about it, but like for the people.
Yeah.
Like what is Boyz II Them to you?
No, that's real. I mean, like, so the thing about it is because of that like bit of like time between like being like, yo, this would be a great idea, and me being like, word, and then actually getting to exact it. Like a lot of shit happened. A whole lot happened in between that space of that, so it was almost a thing where like, I feel like at the time where I was like, when you initially proposed it, and I was like, yeah, cool. Then a bunch of stuff happened that like in a lot of ways of my life, like very much so informed how I wanted to like be in Boyz II Them. Like a lot of life stuff happened that just made me be like, all right, yeah, like what really matters.
Yeah.
like the core
Okay.
of things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and so by the time we had gotten around to like getting to play together and playing out again, I had been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was
Me
like,
as
all right,
well. Me
I
as
gotta,
well. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, I got a lot to talk about in a very
Yeah.
specific, very black way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just, that ended up being a very real place for me to, like, with you, really explore and like facilitate like needing to say those things.
Yeah.
And so it was if it, that, I think that's why it felt so natural off
Mm-hmm.
rip.
Mm-hmm.
Like you know, if it's not, if you're not about to play like, you know, 12, 13 hours a day together, if it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like
Yeah.
natural, you feel me?
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, I think it had a lot to do with being like, oh yeah, we got similar things to say, have seen some things, and like, yeah, we got, there's some things that need to be talked about.
It's so wild, like that it just made sense off rip like that. And I've talked to people about that gig and they were like, wait, that was your first time playing together
Yeah.
and your first gig out of lot, like that's just so we went so many different places. A core memory that I have was, because I, as you can imagine, I have a very big personality and historically haven't had like the most collaborations seen through to this kind of very a natural state where it's like very consistent now, where we play at least a few times a year. So one of the ways that I try to account for this large personality is by just being conciliatory, like just kind of overcorrecting, So throughout, like we went, with B2Bs, we refer to numbers a bunch. So threes is, three records, twos is two records, ones is one record. And so we, for the first like set of the set for the first several hours, we did threes and then went down to twos and then ones. And then eventually Miah went inside to start things off. And I would say like maybe midway through the set, like three-quarters of the way through the set, like because I would ask after like right before I would be playing, like, oh, how about this direction, how about this direction. At one point in time I just goes, you don't need to keep asking me this, like we're good, like haven't you noticed, like like this is actually like crazy how good this is going, like you can chill and just do whatever. And that's a thing that I'm consistently reminded of when preparing for these B2Bs with Miah and with Shane as well. I mean, Taryn, who was doing lights for us the other night. They were doing lights for Eris on Wednesday, and they were like, yo, maybe you should just like call up Shane and just like make it a like B3B, because like which has not happened yet.
Right.
I
That's
feel like
true.
that's the next
That's
natural
true.
progression of just the next thing. But um uh yeah. So what from that first time playing together do you like? What's a core memory you like return to about that?
Yo, so that there's a lot of things I revisit with that, obviously,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like, you know,
I
but
revisit yelling at people
well,
too.
yeah. See, there you go. That's fair. That's fair. No, that's real. Um, no, but like I one of the things I remember, I remember when I played my Still Tipping record.
Yo,
That's one specifically because like I was given that record like years before that, like, and had never really played it out. And like and it's that thing that happened where like I knew there was a skip in it and I
yes,
never corrected it,
yeah,
and I never labeled it because
mm-hmm.
it's double sided too. So it like
Yeah,
Still Tipping is on both sides,
uh-huh,
and one of the sides has this skip in it. I just was like, well, I'm just gonna leave that to chaos and just like see what happens.
yeah,
And it was just funny to pack that and to put that record on, forget about that skip in the record. And then they started doing that in rhythm, like in a perfect loop. And I
yeah,
was like, oh, shit, right. And then, and I remember that happening and people kind of being like, yo, what?
yeah,
Like, and I was like, huh. And I remember kind of just like tapping the table and it popped out and it kept going on it. And I remember later on people asking about it and be like, yeah, you were like doing that yourself. And I was like, no, that was just a skip in the record. I just left to chance.
yeah, yo,
And I liked it because that was a moment where I was like, damn, you really kind of like you learn to trust yourself a little bit. Was a lot of that gig was learning to like trust myself more and the process, because like that was a situation where I knew that was there. I even thought to myself like, I don't know, one day that would be something interesting,
Yeah.
but I just left it and just never like, I just told myself like, yeah, that'll be something that eventually will pop up in the time when it needs to. And it
Yeah.
got me really good at being like, yeah, all in due time. You know, don't rush it. Like
Yeah.
it's all in due time. And I think Boys to Them taught me a lot of that because of how time dilated so much of the
Oh, so
process was
like
too.
I don't like I remember the certain big spikes within that set.
Yeah.
Musically, I remember playing More Femme More Mass for the first time and bawling my eyes out
I remember
because
that,
I
yeah.
just like and you just immediately being there to just like give me the biggest hug,
Yeah,
which was
yeah.
just like so representative of our friendship. Like
Yeah.
it's something that I hold very close. And I remember playing Sex with Me and pulling it up because folks went
Yeah.
crazy when I played
yeah. I
played
remember
that.
I remember that.
I remember that poor woman coming up to me and asking for techno when we were playing rap and turning down the music and yelling at her in front of people, because the thing that really troubled me about that was like I literally didn't think that we were going to be able to gather in this way ever again. I thought we
Yeah,
were
yeah.
I thought it was done,
Yeah.
you know. So coming up to that gig, I had my first panic attack ever coming into that gig because of
Right.
like this whole year of just being like, yeah, this is just kind of like this is it, this is a wrap,
Yeah,
you
that's,
know.
yeah.
And that centered people in such a different way. And then I played "Dancing on the Dick" by Baby Mother, and it just like once again like great. And then also closing with "Transition."
Yeah.
And there have been several people who have come up to me in the years since who have either come out because of it, or were like, "Yo, I was at this point in my life,
Yeah.
where I didn't realize I was so uncomfortable, and I didn't realize that I needed that message." And it's just the strength of the vision of Underground Resistance to make something that is like, I get chills every time I hear that song.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's one of the golden
every
ones.
time I hear Cornelius's voice, I'm just
Yeah.
like yeah, like we we
Yeah.
still need this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, that you know, like I always think of that joint as like that's one of those joints that's like, you know, it's the equivalent to like when, you know, Xavier like puts on Cerebral and like
Yeah,
sends out
yes.
the message to the other mutants to be like, yo, you got
Yo,
somewhere, like
yo,
you got
let's
like that,
ride.
yeah, like that's really how I think of that song all the time, and every time I'm like, yeah, that's a hitter right there, like
Yeah.
you can't replicate those, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's also a record that you know, because I hadn't cleaned it, so it started to slide, and remember my friend Miles yelling out like uh basically like pull it up, like wheel it, like from no, oh yeah, he yelled from the top. I was like, all right, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and yeah, and that the thing about that was wild was that was a learning experience for both of us on a personal level, but then it was also like you were saying, it was also one where you visually watched it be a learning experience for a lot of other people as well.
Yeah.
That was a, you know,
We went so many places.
well, that and just the social setting.
Yeah.
Even outside of the musical thing, like everybody, you know, people were getting outside for the first time.
Yeah.
We had just been through like the global hellscape. Like it was
Yeah.
like, you know, like real shit happened
Yeah.
in a lot of different ways. Like, and
so much loss, so much
yeah,
grief,
a lot.
so much unreconciled feeling. Like,
And so, like, you know, that was the thing about playing that party was that you also could see that in the crowd too.
yeah.
And you could see people like in some ways like working through
Yeah.
some things, and that was interesting for you yourself to be for real working through the same thing in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's always an interesting part of it too, where, you know, a lot of times we're all working through things in life, whether you're behind the booth or in the crowd, but
Yeah.
like not often can that be, it happens, but it's not an all the time thing that it's the same problem.
Yeah.
And it's
We're
the
like
same,
we're
like-
mutually caring for
Yeah.
each other.
And it's the same like, yo, we're all trying to get used to being back in the world right now.
Yeah.
And around each other. And like whether you're back here behind the booth or out there, like we're trying to figure out the same thing together.
Yeah.
And I always appreciated that about that event, like heavily. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. And then, many, many more since then. I mean,
Yeah.
that Baltimore gig last year, that was so raw. It was so fun, just this past Friday. I mean, what are the other Boys to Them highlights for you?
There's some other highlights. I feel like we're always cutting up in some way, shape, or form.
True.
There's a lot of highlights.
It's true. It's true. And some low light. Like we've been through it to get like
Yes.
we have
Yes. Yes.
we have been traumatized together
That
while
is fair.
playing as
That
well.
is fair. That is real. Yeah, no, exactly. It's the range. We've had the range.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciate it as a whole experience.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every gig, I learned something.
Yeah.
In the Boys to Them set, I'm just like, all right, okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, and we mutually get each other hip to other music, or sometimes like the instinct is so razor sharp that I would like what happened on Friday when I played Hot Roti by Bromage Dub.
Right.
And
right.
you were like, oh, I was queuing this up to go into the next vibe.
Yeah.
You know, like this kind of synchronicity happens consistently, which is,
exactly.
Just consistent confirmation that like, yeah, we're aligned. Like this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly.
What other music do you have to share? What's a note you would like to go out on?
Yeah. Here, I'll let you play one for now, but I'll find one that we can do it out.
Okay,
with.
put me on the spot. Dang. I'd be remiss to not play the Persuader. I feel like, right?
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's
this. So since I brought it up, like this is a track that Miah, I think the first you played it at Mix Sunday, right? Or
I don't think so. I think it was later on.
It was.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly where you played this, but I had never heard it before, and it just like my body was overtaken. Like I was like, and maybe by the third or fourth time that I was like, okay, I need to like find this and just download it and just like integrate it into the repertoire, because which is not something that I usually do. So this is What Is the Time, Mr. Templar by the Persuader, and hopefully you'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
This tune does the same thing every time, like for real. right, that was "What Is the Time, Mr. Templar" by the Persuader, aka Jesper Dalbeck. So Maya, what note are we going out on? And what? Thank you for being my guest. Like, thank you for doing
Yeah,
this whole weekend with me.
of
We've
course.
really like burned the midnight
Nah,
oil,
it's true.
burned the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
We are both burnt ends.
Yeah, I'm tired.
So I really like. It's just the real call of like trust and honesty and love and friendship that you just like came through to rock with me this weekend in New York.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been a little while. So it's a long time coming. It's, really,
It's true.
You know,
It's
it
true.
needed to happen.
It's
It needed
true.
to happen. Plus, it been, this was long overdue for deep exposure as well. So I
To
was like,
yeah, to yeah, exactly. Because we've had Shane on, we've had like a lot of my friends on, but yeah, since it hasn't been since 4 years ago
yeah,
that we did this in a lot together.
yeah,
So it was really
yeah.
great to have you. So just for a couple minutes, what are we gonna hear?
Yeah, so last one we're gonna end on is a joint called, aptly "That's My Word," and it's by Blacktronics, which is one of my favorite, like kind of like beat neo, like kind of like in the same breath as like 2000 Black and like a lot of those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one of my favorite records. It's a weird joint, and I just love it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
See you around.